I usually am drawn to like feminist themes, I would say. The Barbie show Life in Plastic was like strongly about body image and like how it can be damaged or upheld and how like different things that can impact you
Hmm.
and your body image as you develop as you're young. Joan of Arc, I think, was like very much inspired by this like story of like a woman who has to like let go of everything that like defines you as a woman in order to like lead men. And then the most recent show, which is Tentacles, was much more about like women's sexuality and like how what's a sort of idea of like feminine sexuality, women, and more like the idea of like women as being treated as objects or women, having agency in their own sexuality through the lens of tentacle porn.
This is Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, with Whitney and Jenkins. Hello, and welcome to the 18th episode of Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, where I bring on guests and we talk about the inner authentic voice and the challenges and the rewards that come from following it. This week I have with me Tessa Flannery. Tessa is a New York, Brooklyn-based actress, writer, and voiceover artist. She studied theater and archaeology at the University of Glasgow in Scotland, and she's written several one-woman shows, some of which have gotten recognition and acclaim and won awards at some French festivals. Tess and I met in the Pittsburgh area doing theater. We had both just returned from some adventures. Tessa had just returned from the UK, and I just returned from Europe and LA, and we were both in a very transitional time because it was the Great Recession, and there was a writer's strike, and there was SAG strike, and so it was very difficult to be an artist during that time and try to plan a future, much less survive. And so Tess and I found each other during that time, and we became friends and supported each other, and she's become one of my favorite humans, and I'm really excited to share her with you. She's a treat. And so here is Tessa Flannery.
Oh my gosh.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing all right. This is the last week of my semester for school, and so I have a paper
Oh,
that I'm writing, and so this is a good break.
what's the paper on?
Trying to like compare like artists creating from pain versus joy and like what the results would be differentiating that.
Whoa. I'm sorry, are you trying to solve the question art has been asking for since the existence of art?
I think
The
so.
question of like, do you have to be damaged to be an artist?
Pretty much.
This is incredible. When you find out, let me know.
Yeah,
That's
because
amazing.
I mean, pain is a universal like experience, right? But
Yeah,
so is
yeah,
joy. So why do we create from
yeah.
pain more so than joy?
Oh my God. You're so right.
I I think. I
I'm
mean,
so intrigued. I need to know. I need to read your paper when you're done, if
and
you allow.
then when you get into like the energetic nature of the universe, does that pain ripple effect into society and then we like stay within
Shoot.
that?
Right.
Like when you create from pain, does it stay within the pain or does it like transmute that energy into
Mm.
something else?
That is fascinating. And I like think so many things because I remember I did this like storytelling workshop and they were like, are you like telling the story that's a scar or a wound? And
Mm,
they were like, if it's a wound, you're like not ready to tell the story. And I was like, ooh, shoot, like I have
yeah.
definitely like made plays about like effing wounds and like tried to make the ending like now it's all finished and fixed and like been completely wrong, like not true.
Oh,
So
well, we
interesting.
can get into that
Oh,
when
okay.
we dive in deep to
Right,
Tessa
right.
Flannery.
Oh man.
Because I think you're pretty authentic to yourself, or at least you appear to be in
Oh
everything.
no. Now we find out.
So
Not at all.
we're gonna see.
Oh no.
Yeah, so the first question that I usually ask people is this. When was the first time that you realized that you had an inner voice that was your own and it wasn't influenced by your family or your environment or the way that you were brought up? It was just, oh, this is me. This is my own person, and I am controlling what's happening inside of me.
Mm. I think I think I was like 8. I well, the yeah, tricky. That's such a tricky question because I feel like when I first started to be like, I was like 8 years old, like biking up and down the mean streets of the south side of Pittsburgh. But I would like bike. I was only allowed to go to the end of the block and back. I couldn't go around the corner, but I would go to the end of the block as far as I could. And then
Mm.
I would like look at the cars going by and I would be like, why are we here? Like, what is the point of, life and humans? And then I would bike back and then I would come back. And I feel like that's when because I think that's probably around the time that I started to like question religious teachings as well. Cause I went to Catholic school as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So
Me too.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was like very much like you're indoctrinated, right? Like the nuns were like, this is this. Um, yeah.
Oh, okay. So can you talk about that a little bit maybe then? Like in the Catholic school when you were 8 years old, how did you how did you take that thought process of why are we here? Like what is the point of this into this religious Catholic
Mm.
teaching?
Well, I was definitely so it makes me think about privilege a little bit too, because I kind of definitely had like quote unquote smart kid privilege, or like the privilege of like I did well at school. So like nobody was ever like on my shit in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
the nuns were like, oh, well, Tessa, you're smart. So, you know, so but the problem was then that I like was like, well, I do well and I got to keep doing well. So I never was like challenging anything in class. Or like I would never like I feel like other kids would be like, how come if Jesus did this, how come this? I was never like that. I was like, I accept everything that you say at face value, because that is what I have been taught to do. But I think, it's funny, isn't it? Like I'm sure like we went to church on Sundays, and like that was like an hour in which we were supposed to, like sing the songs and like think holy thoughts. But I think by around 8, I was like not meditating, but I was definitely daydreaming at
Yeah.
church.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but I would be like daydreaming based on these like things and examining things kind of like
Mm-hmm.
definitely from like probably starting around 8, but like really getting into it when we moved when I was 10 and went to a new church, same religion, but like new church, new everything. Like I went to CCD instead of Catholic school. So then it was like I'm only getting like religious teachings once a week. So I was like, oh, well, now I have to question things once a
Every
week.
day.
Yeah.
Every second.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I was thinking all these like big thoughts about like what the point of life was and not getting the answers that I wanted from church and church teachings as a kid. So I was like, well, maybe there's other stuff I need to explore, because I was a big reader
Mm-hmm.
and like read a lot of books about like from lots of different perspectives, and that was like sort of my view on the world, because we didn't like travel, I didn't travel. I didn't have other like outlets of or like ways to like a TV and books
Right.
and church.
Okay. So when did the writing performance aspects of you come in, which I feel like a lot of your work actually questions these things that you were
Oh,
contemplating at 8 years old, right?
yeah, yeah, I guess so. Um, so I actually was writing like all through that time as like being a kid, and big reader, big time like secret writer, like writing secret poems, things like that. But yeah, I did, and I really wanted to be. Once I hit like high school, I was like, I really want to perform, like I want to be a performer. And then no one was like no one was letting me at my high school. I'd like audition for the play and the musical, and they'd be like, no, thank you. And I was like, I'll do makeup then. But yeah, I don't think I was writing, but like it was like usually terrible poems. And I didn't start like writing, and I did finally start performing at the end of high school. They let me. But it wasn't until college that I started like writing more, like slightly more regularly, and performing my own work. It was like the end of college really that I
Okay.
started to do that.
And you went to college in Scotland, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me
Okay.
yeah.
So okay. How did you get from Butler,
Mhm.
Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
and being in a couple of plays that they let you be in at the end of your high school career to going to Scotland and then studying theater?
Mhm.
What was that process like? What was that thought process?
Well, okay. I have a lot of people that I can blame for the fact that I went to Scotland. So I don't know if this was the same at your high school, but the final year of high school for us in like English class, depending what level of English you were in, I wasn't like in gifted English, but I was in like English, you're doing fine, like
English
I was not in
honors.
remedial English. I guess, was it AP at that point? I don't know.
Yeah, I was an AP. That makes sense.
Okay. Our final year, they were doing all British authors. It was like all British literature, English, English, quote unquote, but it was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was mostly English writers. And there were projects where we got to choose our own English things to study, and British literature to study. And so I was getting a lot of interest in the UK from that. Plus, my parents had always, like, we watched a lot of Monty Python and like a lot of Brit TV and British film. And my mom had traveled in the 80s, like quite extensively for like a woman of not not incredible means in the 80s. Like she'd been to Europe, she'd been to Mexico, and she
Mm.
had slides from those trips and she would show us them.
Okay, that
And
that makes me see Pam Flannery a little more clearly now, I think. Yeah.
yes, yes. Pam Flannery went to Mexico. She went like with the youth hostels. You used to be able to like go and do like youth hostel, essentially like tours with other people in groups. So it like, and you were all staying at different hostels. And but yeah, her Europe trip, we have relatives in Slovenia that we're like still in contact with. And because we're not that far. Pam Flannery, my mom, is like, she's like second generation American from on the Slovene side. So
Okay.
we have relatives in Slovenia. She visited them actually then in the 2000s. I visited them when I was in college. But yeah, so travel was like a thing Pam had done and I was eager to do from like all the things I read, all the shows I watched. Um, and when I decided to apply in the UK, I remember the guidance counselor being like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because things are much later there. So like you don't find out at the time anyway, you don't find out that you got in until after the deadline has passed on accepting a space at a US university. So
Oh,
I had
there's some
applied.
risk involved, yeah.
There was some risk. I had, and also Glasgow Uni, where I ended up going, was like, you can get a conditional offer, which means you have to fulfill certain things in order to secure your place there. So I had a conditional offer. I had to do extra AP testing or SAT2 testing, and like I just had to like prove that I was like ready or something. And I had to like maintain a GPA and all
Well,
things that I was like on track to do pretty much. But
mhm.
they definitely made it more tricky. And um so I passed on places in the US and like with fingers crossed. And I applied at a place called Bristol University as well. Um so I really wanted to go to Scotland because you can do two subjects that are very disparate and you get a master's degree at the end of 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in England you go for 3 years and you get a BA, but you can only study one subject. And I was real keen to study theater and archaeology.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
sorry.
wow.
What a fool. Um but yeah. So anyway, what a long story. What a dreadfully boring story for
No,
everyone. But
that's not boring at all. Archaeology and theater, did you combine those two things in your studies?
so So when I first got there, my first year, you actually study 3 subjects. So the thing about university in the UK and in Europe is that you only really study the thing you're there for. You don't have to do, like, I didn't have to do calc. I didn't have to do like baseline
Gotcha.
general studies, anything. I just was taking classes in theater and archaeology, but my first year you do a third subject and I did classics. So that was really a bridge between those
Hmm.
two things.
Yeah.
Then I like chucked classics out the window as soon as I could. I was tired of learning about the
Too
agora.
much history.
Yeah, so yeah. So that's how those all connected. And basically I had some help from my guidance counselor, a lot of help from my parents with like the application process and stuff. And the thing that's easy about the UK, and I would say like anybody who's thinking about it, do it, um, is that it's one application form for up to 6 different programs. So it's one essay, one personal essay, one, upload of your grades. And then you can apply to like 6 different schools or 6
Wow.
different programs at one school, or, a mix.
Well, that's super.
That
That's
was
good to
easy and
know.
fun and good.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I'll go do that now.
Yeah. Well, all right. How
You
many
okay?
degrees can one human have?
Right. Okay, so I want to go back to this little 8-year-old Tessa on the corner of a Pittsburgh street looking beyond
Mm-hmm.
beyond what was beyond the corner of the street. And
Mm-hmm.
now you're in a completely different country. And
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you're probably on the corner of that street looking what's beyond and questioning things similarly to how you were as an 8-year-old of why am I here? What am I doing? And what's going to happen if I go beyond this corner?
It's true. So I think, yeah, I think there was part of me, I think, that was like, well, I found what's beyond. It's this place. It's like Scotland, and like, because it really was truly like a whole new world, like in a very aerial way of like everything is different here. Like I could understand people generally, um, not when I first arrived, but like uh, it was a very different style of learning and a very different style of performing and of like doing theater and making theater, and it made like creating my own work so much more accessible to me.
Mm.
It felt very much like, oh, I could do this. I was still intimidated by my classmates who all like knew who Brecht was. I was like, I don't know who that is. I thought I came here to learn that. They were like, oh, if you don't already know Brecht, like,
Oh,
um,
it's kind of part of their culture
yeah,
to already
exactly.
know that. Yeah.
Right, because probably they'd already, like many of the students had already done like A levels in theater, and at the quote unquote A level, you're already you already know a lot of this stuff. Like A level English, they were like reading German playwrights that like no one in America had ever heard of.
Mm.
So it was a little bit of an adjustment in that way. And I felt like a lot of times I was like, running to catch up. But I was quite happy there. And I was like, well, I'm gonna stay here and make my career here.
Yeah. So what is stylistically different about their approach to theater there versus here, US?
hmm. I would say it's a slower, more collaborative process, at least when I was there, which, to be fair, now I left the UK a little over 10 years ago. So, but I do think the process there at like, you can survive as an artist in the UK.
Okay. Yeah.
Just being an artist, you can survive. And you don't have to be like working at a famous institution to do so. Like I feel like here, maybe I'm also because I'm in New York rather than like in a regional market. But in New York, if you're not an actor who's like working all the time at like BAM, the Public, places that are like well known, even if you're doing experimental work at these well known places, like you're not on anybody's radar. You're not able to make a living as an artist. And even many of those artists have to have other jobs to
Right.
support the work
Hmm.
they make.
I agree with you
So
on
like,
even on a regional level. I mean, especially
yeah,
now with the pandemic going on, there's lots of
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's been extremely hard for every artist, I think, the pandemic. But for theater artists so much, and then for theater artists in the US who already, there's like so much gatekeeping to
Mhm.
performance in the US, whereas in the UK you really can make your own art, and you really can work with small companies, and you really can like be contracted to like work with, you know, nonprofit organizations, and like there's
Okay.
just a lot of ways to
Amazing.
support yourself as a theater artist there that there are not in the US.
Uh-huh.
There's grant money. There's grant money, and
Right.
you don't even have to have something at the end of it.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, they
Okay,
did
this
a
is
big
helpful.
grant for, they did big grants for during the pandemic to help support artists. And they were like, no, you don't have to have anything at the end of this. Just like use this to like start working on art. Some of my friends who were there who like got grant money, they were like, I have to have something by that. I have a lot of like super motivated friends who are like, I have to have something at the end of this. And everybody that I know, like, I don't want to make it seem like, you know, money is raining down from the heavens, because it's hard to get those grants, and you really have to be working hard. And you have to, there are still gatekeepers in terms of like, if your work is liked by these people,
Right.
then you can go really far. But you can make a living as an artist there, which is like, feels like insane.
Well, I'm developing a nonprofit, which I can talk to you about later, that actually focuses on this very thing of just not being able to survive as an artist in society when artists are imperative to new ideas and innovation to propel society forward. So it
Yeah.
there doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say I just today got an email like for a New York based like grant, but it's like just a space grant. So like a grant for like to give you rehearsal space. Nobody's doing what they would do in the UK, which is like a grant to like even take time to like sit and think about what you want to do.
Right. Exactly.
I'm making it sound like some kind of idyllic heaven, which it is
Or
not. And the arts have really been gutted by the conservative government there. But when you compare the cultures of
yeah.
art, it's like you're not going to, in the US, you're not going to get any support until you have the final product and it captures people's imagination.
Hmm.
You've got to like work your butt off for free. And then, as like I imagine you're doing right now, like, work your butt off for free. And then fingers crossed someone will like the end product.
Right.
There, it's
Yeah.
like, I have this idea. Can I have a bit of money to like go and try and make it a thing? And there are more opportunities for that there.
Right. Or just like be able to eat so you can have the energy to think about what you want to do.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. Rather than like, I'll get 6 jobs and then somehow do art in my sleep, you know.
You were in Scotland for 4 years, 5 years?
I was there for 5 years.
So you were there for 5 years and
Mhm.
you entered a foreign land
Yeah, sorry.
and studied all you could study. And did you feel like you got to a point where you caught up with the other students?
Um, you know what's funny? No. I still feel like because I get like I was like an A, straight A student in the high school and through like, and I consistently was hitting like B's and even got like a C on a paper once,
Oh.
even in the theater department. And I feel like there was just something I was missing in that academic setting. But I feel like um in the settings outside of like the academic setting, and like I knew people who like went straight from that MA that we were doing right into a doctorate, that the department was like, hey, we like what you do. We have this PhD program where we need somebody to hang out for 3 years and go like check out this island. And it was very hard work, but like kind of that's how it was. Like if you were a favorite, if you were like
Okay.
a golden person in the department, you got
All
to
right.
hang and do.
So we won't mention any names, but like what what are your thoughts about like studying theater in an academic setting and
Mm-hmm.
like staying true to your authenticity as a person rather than like maneuvering that so that you can fit within the certain guidelines of what is being taught or the professors that you have to appease them in your arts?
That's a really great question. I, for me, Yeah, because I've talked to people across the spectrum who went to and did uh oh, what's the word when you just are only studying like acting
Like a
and like a
conservatory type
conservatory.
thing. Yeah.
Yes, I've got friends who did conservatory. I've got friends who like me did like a theater program, and I've got friends who did none of those things and like studied with an acting teacher in
Mm-hmm.
New York instead,
Right. Yeah.
or did like the improv levels in New
Mm-hmm.
York, and
Yeah.
are stars of all the commercials now. Um and I feel like the theater program for me, and what a lot of my conservatory buddies have said, I don't know what it's like now, but being in the theater program helped me figure out what I liked and gave me kind of forced me to develop my own toolkit for producing work of my own, or for understanding how we go from like an idea
Mm-hmm.
to a fully finalized production.
Yeah.
Whereas I have conservatory buddies who were like, all I know how to do is like these different types of acting,
Right.
and I don't have the tools to like create my own work, which, I mean, I was chasing those tools because I took every course that involved the creation of work.
Right.
Um, like I studied directing so that I could get
Mm-hmm.
like in closer to acting because they didn't offer acting. And I studied autobiography and performance because I wanted to be able to perform my own work. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and I studied like sound because I wanted to like create sound stuff. So I think being in a theater program does give you the freedom to like specialize if you want, and to like try a lot of different things. Um, but if I only want to be an actor, then a conservatory might be better. Or like if I only want to do tech,
Right.
you know, there are ways
Yeah.
to specialize in a big general program like that. But if you're somebody who like is sure that this is the only thing you want to do, then either conservatory or skipping. I truly don't think everybody needs to go to college. I think,
Right.
skipping it
Yeah.
and just going and like studying with a great teacher,
Hmm.
or
Like
because you can get
life experience. Life
right,
experience.
right, go and travel.
I,
Do a gap year.
yeah, I got in trouble in my final like acting class because I wrote a paper. I think it was like David Mamet's book. It was pretty much he was saying studying theater is stupid. It just like get experience and that's all you really need to do.
And your theater teachers were like, how dare you try and take my job away?
Right. Yeah, I don't think that went over well, but that's just me always asking questions that maybe I shouldn't.
No, you should. You should ask how dare you? You
Okay.
absolutely should.
So Tessa getting B's and C's in Scotland when she
Oh,
was
don't even say it.
a
My
straight A
heart hurts.
student, I know, which is why I'm asking you this. What inspired you to keep going? Like, what was driving you?
Um, well, once I was there, I was heavily involved in like the student theater group, which was outside the realm of the department.
Hmm.
That was really nice because we had this like student theater club that anybody who was studying anything at Glasgow Uni could come and be a part of, and there was no one in the department was overseeing it. No one in the department was involved in it. The department looked down on it. The department, when I first got there, did put up a couple of productions, and that's when like the golden children of like the department were like identified and plucked up and like put
Mm.
in roles and stuff. They stopped doing that in like our like second or third year, which meant that those golden children like went off and made their own work, and it was beautiful and incredible. But I had already like stuck my foot in the water at the student theater at Glasgow Stag, and loved it there, and met people across loads of different areas of study.
Hmm.
So like the people there doing politics, people there doing all this. So once I had that, I didn't I like was at the department to keep making work, obviously, and like to keep writing essays and get
Hmm.
my degree. But like Stag was my life when I was at Glasgow. Like it was all about, I was like the department, I was like the secretary for the club. I like was in way too many of the productions. Probably people were like, get out of this show. You've been in the last like 6 shows. Can you take a break, lady? But like all my best friends were there, and folks would start a show there and maybe split off and like take it to a venue outside of where we normally did our shows, and like it just was like such a community and such a
Hmm.
tight knit community. And so that community kept me going, even though I was like super disappointed to be getting B's and C's. And also, I have this problem, I think, where if I start something, it's either it's an idea that I never start, an idea that I start and then abandon, or it's something that I'm like, I can never quit this. I started playing basketball when I was like 10 or something, at like and I did it all the way through high school until 11th grade, when I finally realized I could just like quit. My mom was like, you don't have to keep doing this. It was effing torture. I hated being on the
Wow.
basketball team by the end, especially. But I was like, my mom was like, you don't have to keep playing basketball. And I was like, what? I think it's
You don't
a lot
have
of things
to.
in my life are like that, where I'm like, I can't quit now. What's that? It's like it's like a fallacy where we think once you've put certain amount of time in, you have to stick with
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Hmm.
Not that I ever considered quitting, but I think because I have that mindset of like, I've decided on this, that's my degree, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish it. Like, I'm here, I'm finishing it.
I mean, that's not a terrible quality to have, like the tenacity and the perseverance to like see something through to completion, because I feel like that kind of contributes to the success that you've, come upon. And like just like being able to create work of your own, even during the pandemic, of like constantly churning out some kind of work
That's true, I
and
guess.
being
Yeah.
like present.
Oh, I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Glasgow for a minute. And so you're not from there, and you speak differently, and you have a different accent dialect than everyone else.
Yeah.
Did they expect you to speak like them, or were you allowed to use your authentic voice?
They insisted that I did not speak like them. Anytime I tried to do a Scottish accent while I was in Scotland, people would punch my lights out if I tried. Like, they wouldn't actually physically do violence, but they would be like, what the fuck are you doing? They were very angry if I tried to do it, because I did it so poorly. It wasn't until fully I had been there for 5 years that I could like even do a Scottish accent. But I did English accents for some of the plays and stuff, and nobody like batted an eye, because the Scots hate the English, and also I have a pretty good English accent. But yeah, so they were like, "You're American," but over the 5 years that I was there, my accent did change, and what I would get all the time was like, "Are you Canadian?" And then when I
Oh.
came back, when I moved back to the US, it was very like, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from
Mhm.
here in Butler, Pennsylvania. My sisters beat that out of me, like beat any weird talking. But I don't, because I didn't know what I was doing that was so weird. But I went and visited for like a long, like I did like 10 days there a few years ago. And when I came back, a kid that I babysit was like, why are you talking like this? You're like, every sentence you say sounds like a question. Like, I
Mm.
clearly had like fallen back into that old speaking pattern.
Right.
So yeah.
When you speak with that Scottish accent now,
Yeah.
do you feel like it's a different version of yourself? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It does make sense. Yeah. I'm more than having like accents. I feel like I have characters
Mm-hmm.
that I'm putting on. Like, I have my like Scottish, I have my like classy Scottish lady, and then I have my like Glaswegian, and then I have like, somebody who's like more like from Aberdeen. Yeah, it's more like I'm doing an impression of a person that I've met, or an impression of like a group of people,
Okay.
than that I'm doing an accent. Is kind of what it feels like.
Gotcha. And then you got Katharine Hepburn in there too, that you
Yeah,
like to
well,
throw
Katie,
in.
yeah, she's always around for a good time.
Yeah. So your voice has like garnered you some work. So what is it about
Yes, it has.
that you feel connected with?
Like voiceover
Yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh, I think I'd always been imitating with my voice. Like, any kind of like comedy or any kind of performance I was doing was like some in the biggest way was vocal. Like, I might like pull faces or something, but like voice was where I had a lot of flexibility and a lot of like, yeah, I just feel like I've always been using my voice for as a tool. And so I guess it's not that surprising. Yeah. So I guess it's not because of the experience of using my voice all the time as like a tool and for comedy and like imitation and things, it's not like that surprising that, yeah, I leaned into voiceover work. I'd also been told like when I was a kid that I had a good voice, and
Mm-hmm.
I did radio, like I was identified. I was doing like credits for something that our student theater group did through that was like in partnership with the student radio, and they were like, come do our idents. And I was like, okay. And I did the student radio idents, and they were like, come be a host on a show. Like, so my voice has like opened doors that I didn't even knock on, which
Right.
was also really nice. And maybe because it was like unique, the fact that I was in Glasgow
Mm-hmm.
and American, but with like a more soft kind of more general American accent. I think if I was like talking like I was from Pittsburgh, if I had a Pittsburghese accent, I
Right.
feel like doors would have been slammed in my face. But it's like there's such a class related like hierarchy of voices, and like classism in the UK is really bad, and it's very much based on how you speak and what your voice is like. And I think it's here too, of course, because we have like things like AAV not being like accepted for like if you're applying for a job you'll be turned away, and like there's so much, because I teach public speaking now.
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
so aware of it, and
Yeah.
so aware of the privilege I have in that not only do I have like my baseline is like a very gentle sound,
Mm-hmm.
but then I have so I can just like turn it a bunch of different ways. I'm not stuck in any one thing.
Yeah. Did you feel like before you went to Scotland, did you feel like you tried to stay away from that Pittsburgh thing? Did you have to
Um,
train yourself out of that?
no, I don't think I did. I think because this is how like I my mom and dad like my mom and dad weren't like abandoning us. We we listened to them talk all the time, but I think we listened more to like TV
Mm.
and movies, and that's how we learned to speak from our mom and dad. And I think when we were really young, we probably sounded much more Pittsburghy. Um, but yeah, as soon as we were like preteens, we didn't sound Pittsburghy at all. Also, like it's pretty. My mom's Pittsburgh accent's pretty mild, and we all of us kids basically have her voice. My dad's
Yeah.
a little more intensely like from Pittsburgh, um, and all of his brothers and our grandparents very very Pittsburgh accenty. But yeah, I feel like the way that like local dialects are kind of dying out because of this, like because of TV and because of movies and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's not
Yeah.
as
Gotcha.
prevalent.
So speaking of family, was that sort of a component of why you chose to not stay in the UK? Or what was that decision making process like? Or was it you were not allowed
Yeah,
to stay?
I
Yeah.
was not allowed to stay. I would definitely have stayed. Um, I put some like light feelers out to like some guy friends that would they marry me, and they were like, ha, 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 and I was like, oh, they think I'm joking. No, so I yeah, the process to extend your visa back then, and I think similarly today, was extremely expensive. Like you have to have a lot of money, and you have to have had that money like in your account for 3 months to like
Yeah.
prove that you're not going to like rely on the UK government for funds, which was something I hadn't done already for my whole time at school. But like I couldn't prove that I had enough in my account for all this time. And you could use like, obviously the way rich people get around it is like parents put money in their kids' account. There's like, I could never have an overdraft in the UK because they were like, oh, you're American, you'll just like run away and never pay it back
Uh,
and things like that. So like, and I also could never have a debit card. I had a cash card only.
oh
So
wow.
like my bank account, I had to go to an ATM and get cash out. I couldn't pay for anything on my card, which
That's
was wild. When I
yeah.
finally got a debit card back in the US, I was like, woo, I can order stuff online. This is wild. Um,
I see. I see. That was pretty hardcore.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there was definitely some like financial stuff in the way by being from the US and not having like super wealthy parents.
Yeah, so what was that transition like for you then to go from being there in the UK and then coming back to where you escaped from, kind of?
Well, one of the first people I met was so wonderful, which was you, or one of the
Oh.
very first people I met. um, yeah, it was real weird because, well, when I came back, I wanted to get a job straight away. I like got back in like October, and I got like a seasonal job selling like Christmas trinkets at the Butler Mall,
Oh.
um, in a trinket shop, um, which was like, and that's where everybody was like, "Where are you from? And I'd say Happy Holidays, and they'd correct me and say Merry Christmas. You mean Merry
Oh.
Christmas? Like
Mm.
insane bullshit. It was just culture shock again, like coming
Mhm.
back to the US and being like, oh my gosh, people are, and then I'd be like, oh, I lived in Scotland for a little while. And before I left, people used to be like, will you be able to drink the water? And when I came back, people still like didn't understand. They were like, is there war there? And I was like, what? It's Scotland. Like, are you kidding me?
Is there war there?
Yeah, people
Oh,
truly are just very, anyway.
stuck in
Also, the
the
water in
Braveheart
Scotland
days. Yeah.
is the most delicious water I've ever drunk in my
Oh,
life. Yeah.
okay.
You need to drink some tap water in Scotland and
Okay, I'll
get ready for the
book my
glory.
ticket right away.
But yeah, so it was culture shock. And I went from like trinkety retail job to trinkety retail job. And just like the money that I had saved up from
Mm.
like my jobs in the UK just like ebbed away so quickly because of how little you get paid for jobs here. And I had a car now, and so I had to put gas in it. It was just
Yeah.
like I had big plans that like when I came back I was just like taking a brief pause and then relaunching to somewhere else.
Yeah, I
And I ended
understand.
up being in Butler for like 2 years living with
Mhm.
my parents,
Mhm.
which like I know people who are living with their parents a lot longer than that, and that's fine. But like for me, I just was like, this is a pit stop on my way to something big. And then it ended up being a really long pit stop strictly because of finances.
Yeah, that's understandable, but I feel like that probably also gave you a lot of time to reflect and really know where you wanted to head and what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Yes. Originally I wanted to go to Vancouver. I don't know if I
Mhm.
tell you that
I
when we
feel like we might have briefly talked about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. But also to be fair, um like that was kind of like a rough time like financially for everyone because of like the
It was
economic
the
crash, right?
right, right. It was I got
It's
home in 2009.
yeah, so
We both graduated in like 2008, right?
I
The year of
graduated
the
from college in 2007
okay.
and then I went to LA
Right. And there was a writer's
and there
strike.
was a writer strike
And
and
then there was a
SAG went on
financial crash.
strike and then there was a crash and so I was in the same boat as you.
That's right.
And so it's we have to give ourselves a little bit of like forgiveness for like having to take a pause because it's not entirely our fault,
That's very
especially
true.
in a culture that doesn't really like, respect supporting artists in a way that is
Yeah.
financially viable.
Right.
So,
And both of us were starting over in a place where we didn't have any contacts and we didn't have
right.
any way to like create the work we wanted. It was kind of we were like at the whim of very wonderful Butler Little Theater, but
And
like
also and also I feel like perhaps a little bit misunderstood or not understood at all.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I just feel like I'm not I'm not naming names, so I'm not making any attacks, of course. But like we got back to the Butler and you got cast as like nothing but like blonde bimbos
I
because that was
know.
all that they were producing
I
was
know.
these kind of roles. And I got cast as like, somebody dropped out, we need you to play a 65-year-old fat woman. And I was like, great.
I
I'm like 22 and I'm
there
like, all right.
yeah, it's like a very like concentrated, exaggerated version of typecasting like in a
Yeah.
Hollywood setting almost. It's like everything is
Yeah.
yeah.
It was, yeah. It was very, considering that it's like a small community and there are not that many folks, it was like they would choose these shows and you were like, what? What? all right,
Yeah,
we could try something fun. I know there were people there also who were like trying to push for more interesting, more diverse, more
right.
fun stuff.
But
Um,
like that gets in that kind of mentality like gets into your head though. If you will like
oh
if
yeah,
if yeah, we don't have to go down this road if we
that's
don't
true.
want to.
We can just hit reverse as quick as we want. But yeah, you're right that we should take it easy on ourselves, that we, that the entire world was like having a financial crash.
Yeah, because we were still trying to create within like our circumstances. Like you
Hmm.
created a one-woman show that I went to see. Um and, like I started
And
a
you were making
band.
albums. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we found things to get us to the bridge to our next step, I think.
Yeah. We're good. We're good.
Yes, yes, we're good.
And also, I think all the local theater is a lot, it has a lot of energy to it and a lot of like great community. And I want to say that. And also,
Yeah,
like, um, is doing a lot more interesting stuff now, I feel like.
yes. Yes, yes, of course. So you went on to New York.
I went on to New York. On I went.
You went on. You went on.
Yeah, which
And
was only possible because I totaled my car right before I was moving, and
that's how you managed.
they gave me the money for the car, and I was like, great.
Gotcha. Well, divine intervention. Okay?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
I'm a good driver.
so you went to New York, and I feel like you found your way and blossomed, and found a community there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it took a little while, and like I've been so lucky that I've been able to have a few different communities there, like that I'm still part of. But yeah. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
now, especially I have I, I'm going to say yeah 100 times. Yeah, when I first got there, um I was doing this like insane dreadful job, but made some really great friends right off the bat. I feel like that's the way you make a lot of friends, right? At insane,
Like
horrendous
terrible
jobs.
jobs. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically every great group of friends has either from some kind of performance situation or from some kind of horrible work situations. But I was apart from the horrible job, then I ushered at the public theater. That was an awesome job, and I made really great friends there,
Hmm.
who I still am in touch with and who I love dearly. And then did a Renaissance fair and made some really great friends there as well. Then uh, after the Ren Fair is when I found the Magnet Theater, which is an improv theater, and that's improv, sketch,
Hmm.
storytelling. That's really been a community that has been so important for me and is so important to like the landscape of New York comedy. And just like, uh the Magnet is for me like the student theater at Glasgow,
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
thing that
Found
like
your home.
pulls me
Yeah.
through, that I'm
Hmm.
sticking it out for.
Fantastic. And you've also created quite a bit of original work that has gotten some recognition. Yeah.
Yeah,
You want to
yeah.
talk about that? And
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Um,
let's give yourself
do
some
you mean
credit
the
here.
plays? You mean
Yeah,
like
the
the plays?
plays. Yeah, the
Okay.
plays that you've written, the play that you wrote and took back to Pittsburgh, which had to be kind of a trip to,
Yeah.
like, be in New York and write a show and then be like, hey, Pittsburgh, look, I did something and, succeeded.
Yeah. It still doesn't feel like success. Like I've still never made any money. But not that money equals success. But yeah, so I made that show that you saw in Butler, which was like an 8-minute long exploration of like the fame of Lady Gaga and
Right.
how great she is. And was a wild time. And but that's like my style of performance. That 8-minute Lady Gaga is
Hmm.
is what my performances are like. So
Right.
um
Yeah. And I actually saw you in one, the Life in Plastic one,
oh,
right?
you came to see Life in
Yeah,
Plastic.
I
Yeah,
did.
so then actually Life in Plastic was the next show I made after that. I met a great director doing a terrible internship. I met a great director, Rebecca Cunningham, who's now, of course, the CEO host of Girl Tales podcast, which I work on. Yeah, what an incredible lady. I met her doing this real fun production in a real terrible internship. And I was like, hey, I want to do a solo show. Will you direct it? It was about Barbie and like Barbie and me. And it was called Life in Plastic. And that won a couple like awards that had nothing to do with me. Like it won like a set design award because we had an awesome set designer. And then after that, I made another really short, like 8-minute thing about Joan of Arc. So yeah, all of these solo shows so far have in common like a feminine icon
Right.
um that is in some ways like maybe controversial, but because even Joan of Arc was controversial. Like
Right,
Shakespeare
absolutely. So
hates Joan of Arc.
what is like your inspiration behind that?
I usually am drawn to like feminist themes, I would say. Like the Barbie show Life in Plastic was like strongly about body image and like how it can be damaged or upheld, and how like different things that can impact you
Hmm.
and your body image as you develop as you're young. um Joan of Arc, I think, was like very much inspired by this like story of like, a woman who has to like let go of everything that like defines you as a woman in order to like lead men. And then the most recent show, which is Tentacles, was much more about like women's sexuality and like how what's a sort of idea of like feminine sexuality, women, and more like the idea of like women as being treated as objects, or women, having agency in their own sexuality through the lens of tentacle porn. Yeah, and that's the show that I brought back to Pittsburgh, and that won some awards here at the Frigid Fringe, which is hosted at the Crane Theater and under St. Mark's, which is horse trade theater. They have been so good to me and so good to like theater in general. Like the Crane's like on the East Fourth Arts block, right next to like La Mama,
Hmm.
right next to New York Theater Workshop. Like they're right in it, and they're just a great place for like developing work and for voices and new work. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of theirs. And yeah, and then we won some awards at Frigid Fringe, came to Pittsburgh Fringe, got invited to Tampa Fringe, but we couldn't actually do that show, unfortunately. Then we took like a nice little break, and we did the APAPS, which are Association of Performing Arts Producers Festival. That's like a conference essentially that happens every year in January. And we took Tentacles there. And the idea was like, we'll get bookers and we'll get producers to like book us in venues,
Hmm.
whether that's colleges or because like there's a big questions about like consent.
Gotcha.
I wrote Tentacles. We were developing it right before the like Harvey Weinstein scandal and
Mm,
the like relaunch of Me Too, which was already a thing, but like it
right.
came to such much more consciousness. So we were developing Tentacles, and we actually had our first reading of it like in August of 2017, I guess that is. And then October 2017, we had like a reading at the Magnet. And then it was like end of October that the Harvey Weinstein scandal like erupted, launching so many things. Was that 2017? Yeah, 2017, I think, right?
I believe so.
Because it was after the Women's March. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we brought, anyway, we did not get any bookings at the producing conference because I'm very bad at networking, and also because the people who did come and see it were like, this is great. I have no idea where to send you with this. Like, I can't send you to like a small town in New Jersey's arts center. They're not ready. That's like what we mostly heard was like, they're
Mm,
not ready.
well, I think that's a testament to the unique voice that you have, though. Like, that's a big compliment in some ways.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll take it as a compliment. And then that was just like so disappointing to me. And then also that like immediately after we did that, is when I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, and it was like, time to do some work on me
Oh,
and not try and traipse around with this tentacle porn show.
I see. Do you want to talk about that process at all? Like working through that, the eating disorder
Um,
thing? You don't have to, but you're welcome to share.
I will say, like, that was 2 years ago now, and
Hmm.
I'm still working through stuff, like, I feel like every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm part of a great, cool, awesome group. A lady called Kelsey Jepson is running an embody love workshop to like encourage you to like not like love your body, like not in like such a, it sounds so dumb to say, but like I thought, like when we talked about scars versus wounds
Yeah, I
and
was
like where
gonna,
you're writing
yeah.
from,
Hmm.
I had written Life in Plastic, like thinking like this is how I like close the chapter on like body image issues for myself. And I was like, I will finish this show in like 2014, and then I never need to worry about body image ever again. And like here we are so many years later, and I'm like in a new group, like just like still working through this same fucking shit because it still is out there and it's still in your head as well.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so
Well,
anything
that's
to share?
good. Like you're using your writer's voice as a way to share a message. So if you're like thinking these things, then others are bound to be thinking them as well. So
You're probably right about that. I think you're right.
so you're turning your pain into a medicine to be very Buddhist about it.
Oh my goodness. I gotta read that essay when you finish it. Ah,
It's been awesome. So I don't want to keep you too long.
I don't want to keep you. I was lying. I do want to keep you too long.
But this is like a good point to segue into my final question because we're talking about like your writing voice and sharing messages within your work and reaching people. So the final question that I ask people is if your inner voice had a billboard, what would it say to the world?
Oh my gosh. Oh, how dare you? How dare you? I'm like torn. Is it like believe women or is it
You
like
can have more than one billboard.
okay, okay. I have like 5 billboards that follow each other along the highway.
Like the movie, like that movie, the three billboards and
Oh yeah, and
what you might call
Billings.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Probably
great movie.
I haven't seen it yet because I'm scared of because I'm nervous it's going to be too much for me. But I'll see it. I'll watch it. First billboard says believe women. I guess the second billboard is like this is what I heard. Is the third billboard like a question to the reader? What did you hear?
Oh,
Because I a lot of my work, as you
oh,
know, involves audience participation or like
yeah.
a like dialogue of some sort
And
and
there's
it
like
participation.
different perspectives and ways of absorbing the
Yeah,
content that we receive. Yeah.
yeah. Fourth billboard. I think the fourth and the fifth billboard are probably super tied to someone whose work influenced me the most of anyone, which is Adrian Howells, a professor at Glasgow Uni, who actually, well, yeah, I would say he was a professor, but when I was there, he was doing like a lot of workshops and things, um, and I don't think he was like officially on staff yet, but eventually he was, and he did practice as research, so he made work that was autobiographical and that was some of the most beautiful theater experiences I've ever been privileged to see.
Hmm.
And he unfortunately passed a few years ago.
Oh.
Um, and his motto was "It's all allowed." But I think my billboards, from what I gained from watching his work and experiencing his work and doing workshops with him, is fourth billboard would say, "Here's my pain," and
Mm.
fifth billboard would say, "You can share your pain with me too."
Oh. Oh. Yeah. Collective pain.
Yeah. But then maybe there's a sixth billboard that's like, let's find joy together. I think there's got to be 6 billboards.
Yeah.
My budget is not enough, but I need 6.
Yeah, as we transform our pain and then it can turn to joy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
I think the collective experience is what creates that joy.
And then, like, the duality of this reality is, like, can you even experience joy without the pain?
Great question that is asked by a great movie. What's that? The kids movie with like sadness and joy? Pixar. Inside Out. Anyway, yeah.
Right. You can't have the light without the darkness. You can't see the light without the darkness.
Oof. You're so good. I can't wait to read your essay.
Oh boy. Well, I can't either. Gotta write this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So if people would like to find your work and what you're up to on the interweb, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. I do a lot of stuff there at Tessa Flannery. And then I have a website,
Yeah, I will add that into the show notes so people can just click on it easily.
It's not that updated. I should update it all now. But yeah, that TessaFlannery.com and at Tessa Flannery on Instagram. That's pretty much where I'm hanging out.
Excellent.
And the Girl Tales podcast, if they want.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Girl Tales podcast is for kids or grown-ups, but it's fairy tales and stories for kids, rewritten so that they are I'm doing a terrible job of plugging this. But they're rewritten so that they are feminist and they are inclusive and they are uplifting and great. So yeah.
Thank you for doing that, actually, and having that to be offered to the world and children.
It's my privilege to be part of.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you're listening and you like what you hear, please consider subscribing and rating this podcast, as it really helps get this podcast out to other people who might be interested in hearing it but don't know about it yet. And also, if you'd like to contact me or reach me, you can reach me at unconditioningpodcast@gmail.com or unconditioningpodcast on Instagram. Thank you so much, and until next time, stay tuned in to you.